Let's talk about extreme minimalism, but not because I want to be an extreme minimalist, but because I quit trying to be an extreme minimalist 3 years ago. And since then, I've had a good life. I've still thought and lived according to minimalist practices, but I want to say a few things that I learned or where I'm standing now. And so I think let's just get started with the first one. So since I'm not aiming for extreme minimalism anymore, because honestly, I think it's so hard to say you are an extreme minimalist, because of course, like, yes, you can have a cut-off number somewhere, but I think the idea of extreme minimalism is always to aim for less, to have less, to try to eliminate even one more thing and to need one thing less and things like that. So I think it's this constant struggle to have less. But since I'm not aiming for less and less and less anymore, I don't see minimalism as a hobby, as an ideal, or even as a lifestyle anymore. Instead, and for some people it might sound similar, but I think there's a huge difference. I practice minimalism. It's like a practice and it's a set of habits. And the way I see it is similar to like brushing your teeth or moving your body, making sure you do routine doctor's appointments and take care to maintain your body. What I'm maintaining is not my body, but my stuff. So I'm making sure that I'm not consuming too much, and I'm making sure that the things I own reflect the lifestyle I have, the things that I need, and that I declutter stuff that I don't longer need, that paper clutter is not piling up too much. But it's not something that kind of consumes a lot of my thoughts. It's not really something I identify as. It's not really something I spend too much time, money, effort with. It's just something that happens as much as other things happens in my life that are just, kind of make sense. Another thing that has changed throughout my minimalism journey, but a lot, I think, since I do not aim to be an extreme minimalist anymore, is that I want to have as few rules as possible. And I just learned something really interesting about rules that is actually in favor of rules. And I made a video earlier this year talking about how sometimes restrictions and rules can lead to more freedom. So I think it's a really interesting and a bit more complex topic that we might think sometimes. But what I want to say here is that as much as possible, I want to avoid rules and avoid like restrictions and things like that, because I want to think less about it. I want minimalism to make sense, yes, but it's, as I said in the first point, like, it's not my hobby. It's not something I want to spend more time with. There's so many other things, like spending time with people, being out in nature, learning in general, that I want to spend more time with than maintaining my stuff. And I think that's the thing that happens, you spend a lot of time maintaining your stuff and shopping, and then you're a minimalist and you spend a lot of time maintaining your stuff and decluttering. And I want to go away from that. I want to have less of that in my life. And so I think it makes sense to have the least amount of rules possible. But then on the other hand, I did realize in that video, and just recently while listening to a podcast that is actually about being sober and not drinking alcohol, which is not really a topic in my life, but I think it can be applied to so many other things that we feel drawn to maybe, and that we don't feel comfortable with. Maybe the amount of thoughts and time and money we spend on them in our lives. And I think with minimalism, it's very, very similar. We sometimes realize that maybe not the amount of stuff we have is problematic, but maybe it's our relationship with it. It's how much thoughts it consumes. It's how much we worry about it, how uneasy we feel about that certain topic. And so I do realize that sometimes, no matter if it's about drinking or if it's about decluttering or buying and things like that, sometimes it might be easier to just completely cut it out of your life. Have this very, very strict rule that you might in the beginning think a lot about, of like having a shopping ban, like doing a no buy, not buying anything. And that can be a struggle, but it can lead to a lot of freedom. But long term, if it's possible for us, for me at least, I do want to have the least amount of rules possible and just kind of have a balanced life, like balanced amount of stuff, balanced amount of everything, like, so that I feel good and that it doesn't feel forced, and that I don't feel like I'm punishing myself or I'm fighting against myself, things like that. So there's a place for rules and restrictions maybe as well. There's a place for shopping and there's a place for decluttering, but at this point in my minimalism journey, I want to declutter the rules if possible, if it makes sense. Because less rules does not always equal more freedom. Because sometimes the rules are actually what makes you able to focus on other things and stop thinking so much about this one topic. And now I think we are actually coming to the most important part of the video, the most important thing that I'm learning, the most important thing that I'm still like thinking about, and that is kind of what led me to minimalism, what led me to extremism minimalism, what led me to quit extreme minimalism, and that is like the reason for minimalism. I actually, in my very, very early YouTube days, even made a video about like why minimalism, where I also said that I don't really understand my fascination for minimalism. I don't really understand why I want to declutter so much, but it's just something I want to do, and then as long as there's no harm, like, why not do it? And I still agree, like, with the point as you can have hobbies, you can spend your time doing stuff you don't really understand. You do not need to over, like, complicate things and always have reasons for what you're doing, what you're spending your time and money on, as long as it's not harming you or other people. And of course, with shopping, that's not always the case. Even with decluttering, that might not always be the case. And with a lot of other things that we do, they might harm us or our people. But there are also plenty of things that we can do that are just like, we do them, we're somehow interested. But I think I'm learning more about myself there, and I'm slowly discovering certain reasons. Like, there might even always be a layer beyond the layer, and But what I did understand, mainly during the past year, is that all of the decluttering, all of the thoughts, everything was definitely not for minimalism itself. Like, minimalism itself is not fun enough, is not a goal that made me do all of this, because minimalism itself is kind of nothing. Like, what kind of a goal is that, to just have less for no reason? So it's definitely not minimalism. And then sometimes I thought like, oh, maybe it's about control, like being completely in control of my life, of my stuff, of my consumption and everything like that. And that kind of seems plausible. Like, I think most of us want to have a certain control over our lives, and I don't think that's bad, but it's not the thing. Like, maybe partly, I don't know, maybe also minimalism as a word, maybe it sounds aspirational sometimes, and maybe that can be part of it, but no, it's not just control. But I realize still now, being almost a decade into minimalism, I'm still so fascinated and so drawn to stories, especially like videos on YouTube, books I read of people that have such a little amount of stuff, and it's just so, it seems so aspirational. And I think, for a lack of better words or better reasons, it's more about like ease and simplicity and softness, actually, than the other things. So that, might also not be the deep down reason. I don't know, like, we don't need to overcomplicate it, but I'm not aiming for less stuff. I'm not really aiming for more control. What I'm aiming for is ease and simplicity in my life, and feeling like not these hard, harsh things, like more softness. And sometimes that doesn't really make sense when decluttering papers and having to do stuff that you don't like to do. But overall, that's what I'm trying to go for. Now, minimalism clicks better on YouTube than ease, I guess. So my titles still contain minimalism, and I think the way you live, if you have like a life philosophy or something like that, it's never possible to pack all of that into one video. But I do still think and hope that you can get something out of this video, and maybe think about it yourself. Like, why am I doing this? What am I aiming for? How are rules helping or hindering the things that I want to gain from this lifestyle. Is it a lifestyle? Is it a practice? Is it a set of habits? Is it a hobby that I have? And with that, I also do think that I'm kind of at the end of this video. So 3 years after quitting minimalism, I'm happy with the decision to not always aim for less, but then on the other hand, like, I'm not sure like how much, it's just an idea that changed in my head, right? So because I'm still sometimes decluttering, I'm mainly way more focusing on how much I consume instead of like just decluttering whatever I think I don't need anymore. And I'm happy with the decision. And I think it's very natural to change your mind a little bit and learn and readjust the ideas you have and the goals you have maybe. And overall, I do have to say also, I do not have like a big goal that I'm aiming for with my stuff, because my stuff is not as important anymore as it was. And other things have more time and resources now. And overall, I still do think that I'm aiming for ease and simplicity, and that of course is reflected in my stuff and the topics I talk about. And yeah, thank you for watching. So let me know what you think about the topic, and I do also want to link you a video here that you can check out. And other than that, I do want to say that I have Patreon, and I want to thank all of the patrons that I have over there. And if you're a patron, if you're interested in becoming a patron, over there you get one podcast episode every single week that talks more about my personal life and also things like minimalism and consumption and the things I learned. So maybe that's something for you, then I'd advise you to check it out. And other than that, I do hope to see you there or in my next video. Goodbye.